Right. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the first strategic goal in the new FedRAMP roadmap that was released back in March, and that's around orienting FedRAMP around the customer experience.
So, Jason, if you really think about this specific one, to me, this is one of my most favorite ones. Um, Talking about the service providers have really found it very difficult to kind of navigate through this space. We've done this for multiple customers, and each time we do it, there's a little bit of nuance every single time. But we can walk on that path a lot easier than many, and a lot of it's because there is a lot of inability to see into that process and how long it takes to get through the review process. And that's a tough conversation that we have with our customers. So as we go through this, help me understand, what can the FedRAMP PMO do? What would your recommendations be to kind of make this more like an agile software delivery program?
Well, I think it boils down to understanding what's important in the significant change process, right? Um, and to do that, I think you have to be reasonable about what a significant change actually is, right? And I think the guidance on what constitutes an SCR and what doesn't has been a little loosey goosey, to put it mildly. I think being more reasonable about what an SCR is in context of a cloud service provider is something that's really needed. I think you know making sure that the guidance on that is transparent and everyone is sort of held to the same um, level of accountability on what constitutes an SCR is critical as well. And then it's letting the process work. I mean, part of FedRAMP is doing continuous monitoring, is making sure that you have controls implemented well, right? And it's around getting those controls audited routinely. And at some point here, you have to trust the process and that the process is working, right? I mean, the whole goal is to speed up continuous monitoring into something that's more real time, right? We've been talking about doing it, annually for a lot of the controls and then monthly for the conmon controls. That's been what we've done, but we could probably speed this up and include the significant changes in that conmon process and let the process work.
Right. Right. So establish a little more trust between the CSP and the FedRAMP PMO or the agency authorization person as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. The next thing really, they talk about here the tackle the known key policy obstacles. You know,
Right.
I know you know as well as I do. There's a few of them that we work with our customers very strongly on, and we give them advice every day. What kind of advice would we try to get back to the FedRAMP PMO on what they should tackle first, and then any suggestions for how they should tackle 'em?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like take cryptography. Just it's an easy example and one that's been litigated over and over and over. Um, I would say the transparency of what is important and what's not important, what's allowable, what's not allowable. The the guidance has sort of trickled and wandered around. It's trickled out and then wandered around over time. And I think providing the sort of the framework of how to think about these things and what's important, with cryptography. One of the areas is, you know, federal data is where it's truly mandated. We've heard that it's mandated everywhere, but in reality and in our experience, it's really only critical or a deal breaker, so to speak, when it's the federal data that's involved, right?
Mhm.
So being super clear about those things. Um, when there's a big transition, like when a lot of uh, crypto modules are going to be going historical, you know, getting out in front of that and making sure that the whole community, all the stakeholders understand what that means, right? Like for a while there were entire groups of operating systems and categories of operating systems with not very good options for a validated crypto module. And everyone was dealing with that at the same time. But we heard different levels of understanding about how to handle that and what to do about it. Yeah,
So let me ask another question right there. I think it's not just the FedRAMP PMO that we probably need to get some through those some obstacles. Maybe it could be some of the 3 POs as well. So can you
right.
walk through maybe some of that too?
Well, give me an
The
example of what
guidance,
you're.
the guidance, from a understanding how to handle FIPS as an example. In the audits could be
Oh yeah, yeah.
way different from one auditor to the next.
Right, and being clear about, here's the validation that you need to do, the
Yes.
test cases, that need to be worked out.
Right. That's kind of what I'm talking about there, right?
Yep,
Yeah. So I think we do see a little, and then we have to spend some extra time explaining what the FedRAMP PMO is saying,
yep.
it just takes longer sometimes to do the audits than it probably should because
Yeah,
of
I mean, I think that the boundary guidance that has been released, there's 2 iterations of it that I think have been formally released, and then I know there's been sort of a draft.
ah,
Um,
yeah,
I mean, that's been good. I think they were on the right track there.
I
Right,
agree.
but yeah, because they were getting very clear about things, but um, you could tell that there were certain things that needed more. Um, I think needed a longer comment period to kind of work out the implications of.
Right.
So working that, closing those feedback cycles and getting that feedback in sooner, I think would help. But that level of guidance that the boundary guidance had, I thought was very good.
I like that level of detail because it was very clear what was in and what was out, even though it really kind of aligned with what we had been telling our customers all along. It
Well, and
it
if you
it
think
helped.
about it, if you go
It
back in
helps when
history,
you
it's
have somebody validate you. Sorry, go ahead.
right. Right. Well, I mean, it's because it's the guidance that we had heard in pockets
Yes.
and in little moments of guidance from the PMO all along the way, and they just consolidated all that into that document.
Right.
Um, I think that later on in this they talk about a knowledge base. I think that would be great as well. Something that's searchable that you can kind of look up for keywords
And that
or
leads right
certain
into that
issues.
next question, really of how do we, how can we really clearly and help our customers or help these CSPs navigate FedRAMP in a much easier pace. Yeah,
You know exactly where I was going, right?
I did. So
Yeah. So, unpack these things in training sessions.
right.
And then have, I mean, it's awesome with AI. One thing I've been doing is taking the script that's generated um, for closed captioning from a video, feeding it back into Chat GPT and getting a blog post out of it, or at least the starting point of it. The tools
Yeah.
exist where it's not hard to make these different types of content more searchable and
Right.
more approachable to get the key data out and findable, and it's not buried in a PDF somewhere. So I think that would be super helpful.
I think that's would be very helpful, right? Just more training videos, just some more clear guidance, and maybe they create a community of folks who will help with that as well. So maybe it's more of a community offering, a forum or whatnot that that they can review and sign off on as well. I like that idea as well. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it seems like it doesn't have to just be the PMO. It
correct.
could, yeah,
Right.
it could be broader.
It could be broader. It definitely could be broader because I mean they brought the board in to help with some of the some of that as well, and maybe some of this other stuff could be kind of larger in nature as well, where you have more common knowledge that's shared amongst the team. So I remember one of our customers at one time had kind of suggested that open forum as well. I know there's a lot of competition, you know but we like to have, and we share our knowledge willingly as well, and that really leads to that next question, I think, as well. What kind of incentives should they be given CSPs to provide the secure configuration profiles? Hey, I'll
Yeah,
say
I've thought about even should this be a requirement?
Right.
I know that there's the requirement to have the CRM. But the issue is the CRM. I think it loses its value because it tries to address every subpart of every control now,
Yeah.
and it's just it sort of loses its meaning when it's 1,000 lines long, and
Well,
you sort of lose what's important. Like, what do I actually have to do?
like, I mean,
If
'cause
I'm going to leverage this authorization.
right. I mean, you know as well as I do, we don't build systems by control. We
No,
build systems by themes,
by theme.
by processes. And then we figure out how to put those controls on those individual processes.
Yep.
And so it can get a little convoluted when you try to match the one for one CRM. So maybe there's a different type of CRM that they need to be thinking about here as well, and not just the control by control basis. Even though I know that's how you get audited, and I know that's how you communicate from a SSP perspective, but something like that I think would help as well, Jason. So
Yeah, and I think one way to solve that would be, for each item in the CRM, it could map to multiple controls, or it could map
right,
to an entire family, you know, and have coverage there, and
right,
have that be understood. But if you know, just one example, like there's the CCGs that AWS has released publicly that addresses what you have to do in each AWS service, um, roughly, right, to address certain controls. And it's you could tell the exercise to build those CCGs was very difficult because the way that the services interact with each other. I mean, AWS has specific services around identity and access. So AC and IA are going to sort of be you're going to be pointed back to IAM constantly,
right.
um, from every other service with regard to how to do AC and IA. Um, so I think you're just going to run into that kind of scenario quite a bit.
I agree. I agree.
But allow the I think the best thing that they could do is allow the CRM to be a little more direct as far as it. I think they just say a lot more if you say like you need to do these 15 or 20 things instead
Right,
of here's a thousand line list of check boxes.
right.
Um, so,
I agree.
all right. Well, I think that can close out this episode, and we'll be going into the second goal on the next one. So,
See you
thanks for
there.
joining.